Whole Lot of Wolves, Season 5, Episode 21. I'm Paul LePage hosting. I've got with me Danny on the socials in Baltimore.
Good evening.
Alex in New York producing.
Hello, hello.
And a returning guest, it is Drew Bryer in Pittsburgh.
Hello, everyone.
So, somewhat instant reaction from the game this evening, or this afternoon, based on your time zone. Wolves 3, a somewhat flattering. No, that's completely wrong, isn't it? I wish it was. Wolves 0, a completely, somewhat flattering Nottingham Forest 3. And when we start to look at it, break it down, firstly, we're going to take a look at that lineup because it did seem right at the start a little short. So kids came in. We had Rodrigo Gomez back in for a start. Somewhat of a surprise was Pedro Lima making his EPL debut for what turned out to be an injured Nelson Semedo with a hamstring. Doyle was in for Andre. Andre was in Brazil for the birth of his second son over the weekend. So that was a considerable shift. So, Drew, with that lineup and then the shape that became apparent with Victor sticking to his 3 at the back and out Nuri taking up that left-sided berth, did you have a feeling that the writing was on the wall from the start?
Well, yes, it did. It didn't quite look like our prime premier lineup when I first saw it. I saw a couple of different graphics. I mean, one I think had Lima in the middle of the back three. People were kind of all confused, nobody really knowing who was going to be where. And I feel like the Wolves for once maybe lost a little bit of their shape for the first time under Vitor. I think a couple of times they were kind of sending balls out to the left, and where Nori usually is there in a more offensive position. And, obviously he was required to be a little more defensive tonight. Whether that worked out or not is anybody's kind of opinion there. But yeah, when I first saw it, I had seen somebody on Twitter, a Forest fan, say they only had to win 15-0 to go into second place by themselves. And when I first saw the lineup, I was like, well, that is possible. But yeah, and then after the first 7 minutes, when one pass broke us down, that was a tough one to swallow. So yeah, I think they tried their best, but I think if we had ever seen Gary bring out that lineup, I think a lot of Wolves fans would be losing their minds.
And based on that, Danny, does it get any worse than Gibbs-White and then Chris Wood scoring?
Well, I mean, the Chris Wood goal is just priced in at this point. I just basically assume that he's going to score against us. Been arguably the best reason that we should have bought him at some point is just so he'd stop doing it. But yeah, I don't know. In the past, it feels like Gibbs-White was a lot more bluster than actual effectiveness, even when we were struggling under like Bruno Lage or whatever. But it just they've just been on such a good run. It's what everybody's been saying is absolutely right, which is that they're just doing exactly what Nuno always does, and he's perfected it to a T this season. And there might be a lot of other things that go into it as well. I mean, they've sort of sorted out the millions of players that they brought in, and that's helped a lot. But you have to say that it was kind of a Nuno masterclass. I think, especially for a neutral, you might say that Wolves actually looked not half bad. And yet when it mattered in the big moments, they took advantage and we did not.
Yeah, we created a number of chances, predominantly balls that look really good into Strand Larsen. So, Alex, were you encouraged with how they fared in an attacking sense, especially with Kuna out for this game?
Yeah, to a degree, I think I was. It's weird to say when you get blanked and lose 3-0, but if you want to look at XG and the chances created, I think that I would say I was pleasantly surprised because nobody really knew how this team was going to be without Matheus Cunha, who's just been so vital to every single thing that they've done so far this year. I thought that it seemed that there was clear direction for both Rodrigo Gomez and Pedro Lima to get crosses into the box. Both players who I thought did a very good job of that. There was that one time where that ball kind of got like stuck at Strand Larsen's feet. He didn't end up getting a shot off. There were a couple other times. I mean, the one could have just been an absolute bullet header for a goal had it not gone directly at Sells. It was kind of unlucky in a way, but it was an outstanding ball in from Gomez. So I thought it was encouraging. If anything, yes, you're doing that without Cunha, but it was encouraging to see two players who, and I have to bring this up because I'm so bitter about it, but who Gary O'Neill said were not signed to make a difference in the Premier League this year, be what looked like our two most capable wing backs in terms of playing balls into the box to a 6'4" striker that we now finally have. So if anything, I'm encouraged by the fact that Vitor is willing to play the young, energetic guys that we signed that have seemed like they've earned an opportunity, that had great preseasons, and sometimes when you keep it simple, maybe those guys can shine, and it's probably a little bit of what's happening, whether it was out of necessity or not. I was just happy for the way that they ended up playing today. And I think they'll probably see a little bit more time as a result of it, whether it's off the bench or even spot starts here and there.
I think for me, the Strand Larsen performance is gradually showing more and more since Vitor's come in, that he's got that target man skill set to him as well, that he can drop deep and hold up the ball, lay it off. I was disappointed in the chance that was cleared off the line. It seemed easier to score that one, but I was really encouraged by the header, because it's not the first time now. I think we're going to see those start to go in, all being well, with the type of delivery that's coming in like that. And I can't remember the other one most recently, but he was up against a good centre back, and tonight, like, Milenkovic has been getting all the plaudits. So to dominate that duel and get such a chance, I thought was quality. If that would have gone in, it could have helped turn the game. But I'm still really in favour of Strand Larsen. I think he's doing great. I don't want any negativity to really come down on him to say, well, out those chances, he's got to be putting those away. I think one of them definitely, but the other one was just that happens. So, do you think Drew a little favour with the handball in the first half on Out Nuri, or just out of all of the instances this weekend alone, have you got any fucking idea what's going on when it comes to handballs in the box?
That's honestly, I feel like if the precedent hadn't been set in so many other different games this weekend, because a couple of times Wolves were really screaming for it on the other end, wanting a handball, and I really thought it was going to be called. I thought the moment they paused and went to VAR, and then as they said, like the VAR is really trying to uphold the referee's initial call, which amazingly in this instance did not go against Wolves. And I think the Wolves did kind of dodge a bullet there. I guess they did say, like, they took into account the speed of the game. If you slow it down, it looks really bad. But playing it at game speed, it is sort of he's trying to. It looks like he's trying to move his arm away from it. But I thought for sure we were about to go down 2-0.
Yeah, I just add to that I think that, like, I saw a lot of people say that we got away with one or that we were extremely lucky. And I just feel like the kind of like you were saying, the precedent that's been set with VAR makes us think that, like, well, that's been given 100 times in the last 2 years. And so it ought to be given here. But should this really be a handball? I still am inclined to feel like we got a bit lucky, but at the same time, it's just like, he's not that's only assuming that he's doing something intentional to block the shot. And if that's the case, then I'd be very surprised. So it's just his arms by his side. He's pulling it behind him. Case closed.
And overall, I'll go with you, Alex, on this one. Did you feel from today that anything shifted in terms of survival chances, especially now we got Vitor? You took chalking up the result based on player availability and Forest's defense?
I think I am, and I think a large part of that is that I thought Wolves played pretty well. I thought that creating chances without Cunha was something that I was extremely impressed with. The way that Larsson's developing into a complete 9, like you spoke about, Paul, I think is encouraging. I just think that there's a lot of elements of this team that don't scream relegation to me. I know we're very, very much in the thick of things with the relegation battle. We've got a very tough fixture list over the next couple of weeks that could have us back in that drop zone before we go into kind of a more a theoretically easier run of fixtures. But to me, my big takeaway out of this is that Forest seem like they're kind of for real, and that even in a game where they don't play their best and they're on the road and their opponent plays well, because Wolves did play well, that they can do what they do well, which is something that we all fell in love with Nuno Ball for a while, which is sit back, hit on the counterattack, be clinical with your chances, and be sound defensively. So I was more impressed with Forest than I was disappointed with Wolves. And you can't discount that not only was Cunha missing, who's the heartbeat of this team, Andre, I don't know that this was the best Doyle performance that we've seen. I don't think he was particularly bad, but I also think that, missing defenders and then a defensive midfielder as sound as Andre has been under Pereira doesn't do you any favors. So this is kind of one of those, like in the NFL, a lot of times they just say like burn the film and move on. That's kind of how I feel. Like we don't have to make too big of a deal out of this and say that we're doomed, because at the end of the day, we got beaten by a better team on a night where we didn't even have our best 11 out there. So I'm weirdly calm coming out of this result, I think.
Yeah, I'm with Alex. And I also think that one of the sort of silver linings of this match, I mean, I wish it hadn't been against Forest, but we reflexively think of Forest not as a second or third place team. So we think that there are points there to be gotten regardless of where they are in the table. But, the silver lining is that Vitor Pereira got to see a bunch of people who maybe wouldn't get to be seen. Pedro Lima doesn't start, probably doesn't even come in if all of our main players are healthy. And so, it was a weird game that hinged on big moments, but still he got to look at a bunch of players who maybe wouldn't have gotten significant minutes before. And that's only going to help him to try to unlock the puzzle for the next several games, which are very difficult. We're playing most of the teams between 2nd and 9th, basically, in the next run. So he's going to need all the information he can get.
So let's just pick up as we put a bow on this one and talk about some of those highlights. So quick straw poll, who would you give the Wolves man of the match to based on their performance this evening? Drew, I'll go with you first.
I want to say, I think João Gomez. I gotta say, he never gives up on a ball. I mean, there are a couple of hospital balls that Saw set him up for, and he seems to always have great body position. He's been incredibly aggressive, and yet hasn't been picking up the yellows lately. I've really enjoyed watching him play lately, and I think he seemed to be everywhere. And yeah, without a particularly strong performance from Tommy Doyle and from Lamina when he came on, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm gonna give it to João.
Danny?
Yeah, I agree. I think João Gomez for me, man of the match. There are some honorable mentions in there. There are some basically just green shoots. I think like Santi Bueno was communicating a lot more visibly, probably because he's the only center back on the field. And also the youngsters, I thought both Rodrigo Gomez and Pedro Lima put in credible performances. And Pedro Lima might have a ways to go in many departments, but he might be our best crosser of the ball in the entire team. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, man of the match, João Gomez, no doubt.
Clean sweep, Alex.
Yeah, I think it has to be, and I agree with Danny's honorable mention. I was going to say we should bring up Santi Bueno. It's weird to say Chris Wood got his goal, but as you know, as we all know, that's just a guarantee. I thought he otherwise did a very good job a lot of the times on Chris Wood, who's just a big physical lug of a man, and proved that he's also Premier League qualities. A lot of these guys that are supposed to not be Premier League quality for Wolves are proving to be. So yeah. But I think Zhao was just incredible. The way I don't know if it's his MMA experience that enables him to contort his body in a way where I feel like he's never off balance, but somehow always looks like he could easily be pushed over. Like it's just such an asset. There's a little bit of that in Andre, but not quite as much as Zhao. And he won so many balls when we really had to. You got to give it to him.
And with being undone by somewhat of his influence again when it comes to Gibbs-White, do you think some of the sentiment that popped up, particularly online after the game, is fair in that we really should draw a line under the hate that gets channeled towards him, because it just seems to really fuel those performances? So do we stop that altogether, Drew? Do we not fuel that particular fire?
So, being from Pittsburgh and a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, every time Jaromir Jagr, he made this famous dying alive quote about being in the Penguins locker room. And just for years, Penguins fans would boo him every chance they got. And the second he touched the puck, and, he made plenty of Penguin goaltenders look quite silly in his time in an away jersey at the Mellon Arena, which is now the PPG Paints. But I think it is time. It seems to have if Wolves fans are hoping that it's going to throw Gibbs-White off his game, then they gotta try something new, because it seems to just fuel that man. He had a great game today, and like with just a few, just a few passes, a few counters. And he's a great Nuno ball attacking mid is what he is. And he played a great game today. So yeah, it might be time to let that wane a little bit.
It certainly put him in the shop window as far as international potential is concerned, with the New England coach being there in attendance. And certainly our boy and my boy Tommy Doyle didn't give himself any favors about possibly breaking in, unfortunately. So that's someone we might be seeing a little more of when it comes to the international game as well.
I wanted to ask you, Paul, just historically, like with Wolves players who become hated that are homegrown, let's say, I'm just kind of curious if what Wolves get in return for them impacts the way people hate them. Like, I understand the Gibbs-White hate. I understand what happened in the cup match and his celebration and how it got really chippy, and then the mocking of the celebration from Cunha, like all of that. But can we really be that angry? Like, he was never going to be good in that period for Wolves, and it wasn't him, it was us, right? Like, we should know that by now. We should understand that. And we made a killing off of him and are probably going to make more, because he's taking Forest along with Nuno to unprecedented success for them in the modern Premier League era, which is only going to benefit us more monetarily when they play in Europe. Even if he were to be sold on, we have a sell-on clause. So this is like a win-win-win. So can we just, I don't know, like, wouldn't the return that you get on the player make it less likely for us to continue to hold this grudge?
Yeah, I just think that it's gone. Everything that's gone with it now is there's no turning back. Just that celebration, and just it can't be undone anymore. If it was different from the outset, and it was just like a calm, reserved goal and a go and that's it, fair enough. Maybe a little celebration with their fans, but the whole goading and that element, that's never going to change now, and it's from both sides. But it's certainly not the extent that really there was an intent of a move forced. like that he really wanted to go at the time. He wanted to move for first team football, but it wasn't like someone forcing a move like back in the day we had Stephen Fletcher, who, when we got relegated, couldn't wait to jump ship. Nothing. It was nothing like that. So there is some element that there's players that are due a particular strain of hatred, and those are not. And as you rightly point out, circumstances dictated that Gibbs-White shouldn't have been put in that particular bucket. So
I always felt like it was just very misplaced. Like I get it. Like he ticked me off too, at various times, but it was like at the time, like Alex said, it was kind of a no-brainer. He wasn't getting in the side, whether that was the right choice or not. We made a decent amount of money on him, and it honestly took them about 2 years to get him to like be consistent enough. While they were also scrapping against relegation, things could have gone much worse. And who knows what that does to his career, but it's very odd because to my recollection, I mean, I won't go into the origins of the supposed slights on either side, which are, some of them are kind of unsavory, but like if it started with him being unhappy here because Nuno wouldn't play him, and then it always felt weird that he sort of took that out on the fans, sort of based on like a sort of specious incident, potentially with his missus or with his family or whatever, like, I mean, that I'm not trying to like make excuses for that if there was something between him and his family and the Wolves fans, but like, it's like, it felt like his beef was much more with the hierarchy at Wolves and Nuno for not valuing him properly. And then he kind of took it out on the fans, and then the players on our side would sort of react because he's antagonizing the fans, and they naturally sort of like jump into the tackles a bit more or whatever, or the Cunha stuff or whatever. And then he's like taking out the fan stuff on them, and it all just like feels very odd. I'm not trying to like paint him as some sort of like, like petty child or something, but it just like, even from the Wolves fans' point of view, it felt like weirdly misplaced. Like Alex said, he moved on at the right time for him, and luckily it worked out over the course of a few years to where he is now. Good for him. I'll probably never like him very much, but like things worked out for him. That we're not talking about like a Mateus Nunes who like literally sat on his hands. Like
Yeah.
Morgan Gibbs-White wanted to leave. He said he wanted to leave, and they got top dollar for him, but he didn't refuse to train or anything. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it just didn't work out because the transition of managers too. Like, remember he came back, and didn't we give him the 10 shirt in the summer?
Mhm.
And then like we tried to make it work one last time. I just wanted to say something about Ryan McCarthy's comment, which our YouTube viewers at a whole lot of Wolves can see on the screen right now. I agree, and this might be one of those weird disconnects that, like, not being at Molineux and one of the local fans like in that community and being an American watching on TV instead, you feel this more. I had way more vitriol based on the Pedro Neto celebration on a goal he didn't even score, by the way, for Chelsea in a rout than I did for Gibbs-White, because I think any reasonable person looking back on it now, like Danny said, would realize like there was probably some wrong on both sides. Wolves fans definitely gave him some stick that he might not have deserved. Whereas with Neto, all we did was love the guy, give him his dream move, let him go make the millions more that he wanted to make and go to a club that's going to compete. And then that, like, and it was so fresh, and that's what you do. Like, I could almost understand Gibbs-White's hate for us, where I just don't understand how Neto wouldn't just not celebrate. Like, just do what everybody else does. It's too new. So I agree with
the other comment from Ryan. Let's just blame Jeff Shee and move on from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so with the transfer window fully open after the match, Vitor Pereira said to Sky Sports that the squad is short of 2 to 3 players. It looks like we might get some help at the back. Emmanuel Agbadou looks to be signing from Reims in France. Medical today, by all reports. 18 million euro fee with 2 million in bonuses. 27-year-old centre back. He's captain, I believe, right now for Reims, and a international for Ivory Coast. So, Drew, if that is the first new body through the door, do you think they're right in that type of number of reinforcements that are needed in addition?
Yes, I would say absolutely. It was kind of telling today how short this squad is, and once again how an injury or two away they are from being significantly shorthanded. I know you guys talked about it last week when we were talking about shipping out Lamina, and then all of a sudden Andre's not in the squad, and if Zhao gets a fifth yellow or something to that effect, all of a sudden you're short, and that's that is in the midfield, and boy, our back line looks very depleted with poor Craig Dawson just cannot stay healthy, and Totti is out for at least a month. Semedo had a hamstring today. Let's hope that's not significant at least. And I will say it was exciting to hear that Agbadou is coming, but again, initially we heard that he was going to be there tonight to watch the game, and then they say he doesn't even have a work visa yet. They're still trying to do those things. Yes, Vitor is saying he wants 2 to 3 more, but I don't have any faith in Fosun that he's going to get him. And even with the Agbadou signing, I kind of had hoped he would be, I obviously we knew he wasn't going to play today, but I was hoping he was going to be in. He's not even in the country yet. It just feels like with every positive news that we get, there is sort of like but hold on, not just yet. And so that certainly worries me. Just being a Wolves fan for 4 years now, in 4 years of transfer windows, it does give me concern.
I think the one area I'm more positive about is the volume of names that tends to lend itself to that 2 to 3 arrivals. I'm really hoping it's more on the 3 side, and the names that have been mentioned as centre back encourage me that it's not only going to be Adebayo coming in as the only one. I think hopefully he's one of 2 there, and the other one, I think if there's so much talk around Lamina moving on, then to that squad depth, even a direct replacement is needed. And that even had Liam Keane for the Express and Star mentioning that Wolves are admirers of Palmeiras midfielder Richard Rios and could potentially look to add a midfielder if Lamina moves on. So Rios is obviously playing in Brazil right now, but Colombian international. Has done pretty well for the national team in the highlight reels that you start to pick up on when these types of names get mentioned and the YouTube clips. So I'm hoping it's more a case that we get maybe those 2 defenders in a midfielder based on those departures, and then if there is anything else outgoing, that we've got a replacement coming in or lined up, because that squad does get to start looking pretty thin like it did tonight if you've got any more absences.
I was just going to jump back in. Just, we've been, initially we heard that Kevin Danso was the primary target. Then we hear he's rejected a move. We hear about Kusarov, and then we hear Man City is connected to him. I mean, who's he going to, if he has those 2 choices, Wolves and Man City, I think, it's all of a sudden, a good looking window becomes less and less good looking pretty quick.
Yeah, well, you just got to take into account that, one, there's a lot of agent talk out there right now. That's my understanding. And I, don't have primary sources. I'm just picking up on the same kinds of things. But, it looks good to a player to say that they rejected a certain club, that Wolves 100% wanted them and he said no, as opposed to Wolves moved on because they thought it would be difficult or too expensive or whatever. And I think with Kusanov, and I'm not like trying to lend credence to any particular rumor, but like in the case of Kusanov, I've seen it described as kind of could be more of a Mateus Nunes signing. I know that, that's left a sour taste in our mouths, as we just discussed, but a player who is being brought in sort of intentionally short term, because I think people are connecting the dots that Mendes is involved potentially in that one. And so you can imagine that if Mendes can't make a deal happen with City, maybe he doesn't quite fit the profile or whatever, then it might be to Mendes's, financial benefit to get the selling club to lower their price so that a club like Wolves will get him. And then he shows what he can do in the Premier League. And then a big club comes in for him later. So there's a lot of people with a lot of financial interest in these things. So like Paul said, the volume is sort of encouraging, and it doesn't have to work out forever. I mean, like, it's really fun to go through this period where the hierarchy at the club, want to find these hidden gems, and they're all coming in young, and it's so exciting. I mean, Pedro Lima is a great example, and he's so fun to watch and exciting because of how young he is. But I mean, we're at the point where you need a balance. That's what Vitor Pereira is talking about. He's talking about balance. I mean, yes, we need a center back, probably two, but like, we also need experience. And I saw a report recently about Agbadou that it's like, oh, really breaking with Wolves' current strategy because he's so old. And I went and looked, he's 27. It's like, yeah, he probably doesn't have another huge move unless he really blows it up at Wolves. But like, we can't just be buying 18-year-olds. Like, at some point, like, you're playing in the Premier League, like, you're playing against full-grown men, and my God, I'm glad we got out of that game unscathed, kind of like Drew said earlier. Like, we not only had unnatural center backs, we also had Ryan Aït-Nouri, who's one of the best progressors of the ball in our team, but also like not a very large person playing almost as a center back, and so we need aerial presence. We need height. We also need just experience in the game. So let's hope.
So one potential positive, not an incoming, is a new lucrative long-term contract for Matheus Cunha, which seems to have hit the press, has got some reputable journalists talking about it. It's been mentioned by Romano as well. So it's got all of the talk behind it, even to the extent of stopping those Arsenal rumours that pretty much tend to be started by their fan channels and overseas sources as far as those go. So do you think that will be a good thing to lock Cunha down, even if it's just protecting his value for a potential future departure?
I mean, I think it'll be absolutely massive. And if anything, just to also know that when he does eventually move on, which seems inevitable, much like with Neto, will be fairly compensated. But I for me, my short-term joy is just in ending all this speculation. It's just so frustrating. Like, the arrogance of just like Arsenal fan blogs to be like, I don't know, you think this Cunha guy would be a good signing? Maybe we should like... What are you talking about? He's one of the best forwards in the Premier League this season. And what makes you think that he'd be willing to go and play second fiddle to Martinelli or Saka or any of these guys, or start in a front three with them when Kai Havertz is finally good, just to be at Arsenal, like, who are probably not actual title contenders this season. So I just hate that arrogance, just insane to me. Like, why is it so crazy that this man would actually enjoy playing at Wolves for a little while? Like we said, he's been at big clubs. Like, he's been all around Europe. He's not just someone who's never played anywhere major. He played at Atleti. He played in a great league in Spain for a massive club that's won titles and been in Champions League final. Like, and it didn't necessarily work, So get that money at Wolves, and then just see, replicate the success. That's the other thing. Like, I know you guys were talking last week and I was listening when I was out. Like, he could realistically have 20 goals this year. and then he'll be at the absolute peak of his value. But like, would any of us actually bet on him to have 20 goals again next season? Like
20 goals in a team that's going to finish like 16th or something,
which is absolutely insane. But like, I mean, I also feel like if I were one of those fans, I guess maybe you don't care because you're used to buying whoever you want, whenever you want. But let's say like we're a little bit smarter and more economical club, like Liverpool, for instance, I would be like, do it one more, give me 15 to 20 next year and then we'll talk, right? Like they like, you know, just grasping at whoever the hot name is in fantasy Premier League. That's like 100%. So low barrel. Like, give me a break. Like,
yeah, I hesitate to say it's driven by fantasy Premier League, but it feels like a very fantasy Premier League signing. You know, and I think the world of Cunha. I think he's such a phenomenal football player, especially in terms of entertainment. You know, we talked about that all the time with Traore, and Cunha has that plus all the goals and assists. But it's just like, I don't know that he really fits into an Arsenal squad. And one of the reasons that he can be so good in our team is because he's the best player of the team, arguably. He just has the freedom of the pitch. He's not going to get to just run around everywhere if he goes to Arsenal. And so he's going to be restricted in different ways. And they look at, like, you know, his one of like a couple of his goals against Fulham and think like, oh, this guy could be shooting from outside the box for us. And it's just like, it's not going to be the same thing, man. Like, it's only happening because of how stretched that game is. Anyway, yeah, I just think like the getting the new contract is so important because maybe there is massive interest, you know, and maybe he does fit into those teams. But I'm telling you right now, if the guy is on a new deal that's like, you know, probably 4 years by this summer, and he's on bigger wages and potentially like a vice captain, or maybe he's, you know, we leak that he's going to be captain next year or something. We're talking $100 million player easily. Like, you can hold out for that because it's like, not only is he our captain, but you can see how completely key he is to this team, and you can't just rip him out. And also, he's way younger than people think he is, just because like he's so good. But isn't he only like 25 or something?
Yeah. And Todd also brings up a good point in that you know, there's been talks. I don't know, Paul, is it can we substantiate the fact that we think there will be a release clause included in his new contract extension?
Not that it's been mooted, but I think those two pretty much go hand in hand.
Ornstein mentioned before the game today on the NBC broadcast, when they interviewed him about various transfer things, that allegedly, according to Ornstein, the new deal would have a release clause if Wolves get relegated. But if we don't get relegated, there would be no release clause, because apparently Wolves don't do that. Don't do release clauses. So that's what Ornstein said. That's the latest. I don't have any sources better than that.
Yeah, appreciate that last point, Danny. And I was just going to say, yeah, from what the last that I've read, though, was that there was kind of a snag, as they say, Cunha wants to weigh his options. And, you know, I don't, again, a new-ish Premier League fan here, so I don't exactly know what all that means. It sounded like it may have been connected to the release clause, but I don't know, Paul, maybe you could shed some light on what you think might be holding this up. I mean, you know, it seemed like we were getting just good news after good news with, you know, a new defender and then a new contract for Cunha. And now, you know, there's been a bit of a pause. So, Paul, if you can.
Yeah, it could be a little doom and gloom in that bad result and despondent off of the back of this, and just that back-to-back good news of a new signing, and then a Cunha new contract would feel like a new signing as well at this time as well. So I think there's an element of that in the air. I could see what Danny mentioned, David Ornstein talking to about not necessarily having a release clause, but I do think there's bigger factors at work in terms of gentlemen's agreements and Mr. Mendes having a hand in it. And like, I'd very much think it would be something along the lines of like a Pedro Neto, that it might not be a release clause, but there's something in there that says if a certain club of a certain stature playing in certain competitions come in for me, then you've got to open it up in some way. So I could well anticipate something more around that than having something in black and white written about a value per se.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And it just struck me. I mean, like, Sky Sports have good reporters, I'm sure, working on this stuff. I don't have any reason to doubt them, but it does set off a certain alarm in me that they are the only ones who said that he's weighing his options. Like Fabrizio Romano, that leech, you know, he would say that stuff if it would get him clicks. You know, Liam Keane hasn't said it. None of the other journalists have said that he's weighing his options, that it's in doubt. Meanwhile, Cunha is down in Brazil getting a little rest while he's suspended. So I look on that with a little bit of skepticism. It could be true in the basic level of like, there's not a deal yet, but I don't know. We hear like, oh, he's weighing his options and we think he's on the phone to Arsenal. You know, he's talking to their director of football, just saying, well, maybe, but that's not the way it works. So.
Well, excuse us Wolves fans for always thinking the worst.
It's natural. And also it sucks when it's the player that you love and you don't want to hear. They always love to frame it that way of like, he's weighing his options. Like he's sitting at the dinner table, like with an Arsenal jersey in his hand or something, like looking at it and thinking. It's like that, you know, it's more complicated than that.
So, break from EPL action this weekend because it is over to the third round of the FA Cup. We are on our travels to Bristol City. It is on Saturday, kickoff 7 a.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be streamed on Paramount Plus, that family of channels. So, dig out those old subscriptions like me that you may have had lapse from the League Cup early in the season and to get your fix of the game on Saturday. So City are 8th in the Championship. They're in and around the playoff mix. So are we looking at it, Drew, in terms of a rotated squad, similar to what we effectively saw tonight, especially with no Cunha again serving the second match of his ban?
Well, I will say my wife just signed us up for Paramount Plus Premier subscription so she could watch the Golden Globes last night.
That means we're going all the way to the final then.
So I will
Mrs. Drew.
Definitely give her a fist bump when this is over. Thank her for that. But I think, you know, again, this rotated squad today, you know, Forest is, man, they know who they are. They played their game. And they caught, you know, they literally caught Wolves at like some bad time. I wasn't that discouraged though by the way the squad played today. And I mean, my goodness, a couple, like literally Strand Larson, I mean, he, like the goalie was like literally protecting himself on one of his saves. It felt like, so I think that, you know, I think the Wolves can make it work here. And I'd like to see them make it into the next round. And I'd like to get back to Vitor ball and a clean sheet. And I'm going to go a very dramatic, or even like a very, early goal and a park the bus, which is what I would love to see this team do. And I'm going to go 1-0 Wolves.
That's a pretty good stab, I think, of how the game could play out. Now, interesting one, guys, is the goalkeeper situation, in that we've been serial rotators when it comes to the number one and coming in for an FA Cup game. So with what's gone on this season, do you think it's just simpler just to keep Sarr in goal and not change it whatsoever? Or do we go down the route of giving Johnston minutes, or is it a return of Dan Bentley even?
It's so awful. I can't believe we're at the point of having to choose Bentley versus Johnstone in the cup matches. Like, if you don't choose Bentley, he's sitting there thinking, what was this season even for? I know that like there was some talk that he wanted to be a number one. There was some like talk of him moving to somewhere in the summer or whatever, but it's just like he has to have at least thought that he was going to be number two this season. But at the same time, you have Johnstone, man, that's a piece of transfer rumor we haven't gotten to because there's nothing serious, but it's just like we could move Johnstone on, just simplify things. Todd's saying, "Are we writing off Tom King in the chat?" Tell him to do his vocal warm ups because we can use them on the commentary. But yeah, I want to believe that we're gonna go for it a bit. I sort of think that we won't necessarily rotate, but the players who need to be protected for Newcastle will be protected. Like we don't know how serious Semedo's injury is. They said on the comms that it was minor, and Vitor sort of backed that up, but like, I don't know. And if he needs more days, then we're going to give him more days. Same thing with all the other players who are out, the ones with the tweaks, Dawson and whatever, we're going to give them time out. So we could be talking about Alfie Pond starting, which, I mean, he impressed me against Brighton, but that's still a big change in the back line. So yeah, I think who the hell knows, roll a die for who's starting in goal.
Let's get your prediction, Danny.
Well, I unfortunately remember last week that we went over the predictions for the half season and where are we going to come out of the cup. And I think both you and I know that I at least stuck to us going out in this round. So I sort of have to, or do I go one on the other side? Do I betray my former prediction?
Yeah, that's called hedging.
Yeah. No, I'll stick with it and say 2-1 Bristol City.
Wow. Todd is agreeing with you as well, saying 2-1 Bristol City.
What are you going for, Alex? How does that impact on
wait, I just want to, I just misspoke and I need to clear the air because I was instructed on Twitter. It's one of those things like with Nottingham and Notts Forest. Can't call them Bristol because that's Bristol Rovers. It's insulting to the Bristol City people, and apparently it's not funny because you're not punching up or whatever. But just to clear things, Paul needs to screen me for all these things. I usually am the knowledgeable one, but all the different two-team cities and what you can call one of them and you can't call the other one, I have a lot of trouble keeping track of.
That is good point. Alex, what are you going to go? Are you going to go in line with your season predictions, or are you making a switch?
Yeah, I think I had them going to the semis. I had them making a nice cup run at that time. Regardless of if I really think that that's possible, I think they win it. I just think that like we're too early in the Vitor era for them not to go out and give max effort, and whoever gets a start is still fighting for starts in the Premier League because
definitely
the rotated version of this squad that we'll see is not even that far off than what we saw today, which played pretty good against a now second place Forest team in the Premier League, right? So I think that should be enough to beat Bristol City. I think whether it's Rodrigo Gomez, Lima, I think is nailed on to start again. And I think those guys at maximum effort, which they'll be giving because they don't take a start like this lightly, are good enough to beat City. And I'm going to go clean sheet as well. I'm on board with Drew and what Mr. Joey Brain said in the chat. I'll go 2-0 to Wolves.
I think I'm going to hedge in that I'll keep my prediction about going out in the third round, but I'm going to go for a win on Saturday. I think it could be nervous. Might be one of those games that we actually go behind in, but hopefully we've got a little more quality to turn it around and come out winners. So I'm going to go Bristol City 1, Wolves 2.
All right. I like it. Now it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for No Stupid Questions, brought to you by our friends at Esfuerzo Wines. And much like Wolves themselves, there has been a mid-season change at Esfuerzo Wines because not only can you go there to get 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle as you always can, not only can you go and use a promo code for our show and get a discount, but that discount has changed. And it is on the upswing, much like the optimism surrounding Wolves and Vitor Pereira, because now instead of promo code Wolves at esfuerzawines.com, you can go, as you see there on your screen, and use the promo code Vitor. That's right, Vino for Vitor, but the promo code is just Vitor, Vitor, to get 30% off of your wine order. And that includes the special 1-pack blends, both the red blend and the Sauvignon Blanc, which we have all purchased and sampled. I've still got a bottle of the Sauvignon Blanc left after the holidays. However, I couldn't crack it tonight because there's no Vino for Vitor. Losers don't get wine.
I already finished all my wine. I got to order some more.
Also for that reason. So we encourage you to head over there. Now, we also encourage you each week to send your questions in for this segment, which you can do from the prompt at our Twitter or X account at WLWpod, or you can email us each week, hello@wholelotofwolves.com. So also, if you're watching on YouTube at Whole Lot of Wolves, you can feel free to throw a no stupid question in the chat right now for those of you who are joining us live for this. But let's start with this question from Jeffrey, who is at bread_hammer, who asks, besides Cunha, who do you think we missed most today? It's interesting, Paul. There were other absences. We mentioned, it was honorable mention for Andre, but other than Cunha and all the players who were hurt or out for whatever reason it may be, who was the biggest absence?
I'm doubling down on Andre, actually, just because I think he stops that first goal.
Yeah.
Or he's got more of an influence over at least breaking the play up. As he was breaking through, I could see what was going to happen, and I was crying out for someone just to take a yellow and chop him down and get a strategic one, even if it would have been like 6 or 7 minutes early into the game. And I think we'd have been set up a little differently to have a better counter to that type of break and that type of influence if Andre was playing.
Yeah. What do you think, Drew? Are you going for Andre?
In honor of Joshua Buckley, I'm going to say Nathan Collins.
He does love Nathan Collins, man.
But boy, speaking of taking a yellow, where was Doc on that with Hudson-Odoi on the second one too? Man, I would have been okay with him hauling him down too. Andre is very much, and honestly, like, as much as I think Andre's a great call as well, but you know what? I'm going to take Semedo. I mean, the captain, I wanted to see Pedro Lima. I didn't think we signed him to sit for 2 years or anything like that, but his first touch just wasn't there for me today. It was a little bit sloppy at times, at some critical times, and man, there was a time I felt like he could have really at least taken a shot on goal. He just sort of crossed it back. I think Semedo would have helped calm it down a little bit more. I think we missed his leadership out there. I think he's really embraced this captaincy, and like I feel like he's really been great under Vitor. So I'm gonna go with Nelson.
Looks like Todd from Minnesota agrees with you in the chat there. Danny, you going for anyone already mentioned, or are you gonna be different?
Yeah, no, it's got to be one of the two, and I honestly can't decide. I think one of the more interesting things going forward is where does Tommy Doyle fit in a Vitor Pereira team, and I think and it could be a lot of the absences affected him a lot, being in the center of the park, but I think he really struggled at times to do the things that he is good at. And so it's just hard to see how you drop Andre. And I think he was a huge miss. But to Drew's point, I think I could maybe just slightly give it to the edge to Semedo, because Lima did some really exciting things. I'm really excited to see him. But at the same time, I think we saw also we weren't even getting the best out of Doc, who's been actually pretty good at center back. Ryan just said Mosquera in the chat. And I feel like we didn't even consider him because he's been out so long. So yeah, maybe that's the obvious right answer. But yeah, it was just clear that I think until the last 20 minutes or so, we really didn't see Doc cross the halfway line if he could help it. And I think that entirely has to do with the cover that he has with Pedro Lima on that side. I just think that, or, you know, occasionally they'd switch and it was Rodrigo Gomez, but same thing. I think him and Semedo have, like, especially with Doc at center back instead of the other way around under Gary, I think like have a really good understanding of when one can go forward and the other one can go back. And then we know that there's adequate cover on the way back. So yeah, I think Semedo is a big miss, and maybe even for the intangible stuff, we haven't really seen that much of him as captain, but you know, he, like Drew said, he seems to have grasped it with both hands. So
yeah, I'll round it out and just say it should come as no surprise that there are as many good answers to this question, given how depleted our squad was. But you could even make the argument that a healthy Toti Gomez, who's always been pretty good as a left center back,
that's true,
in a back three, would then enable Aït-Nouri to take a position that Rodrigo Gomez was in. Rodrigo Gomez was probably then start over Lima, and bring all of his pace and energy. And then Aït-Nouri would have a little bit more of a license to get forward and maybe replace some of that ball carrying ability that we missed out on with Cunha being out. So I'm still convinced that even with maybe we signed 2 center halves. We know we got 1 coming in. I still think that we can be a very good 3-4-3 team with Toti Gomez healthy and being one of the starting 3 center backs, which I don't think we're that far away. Like, I want another one for depth, but I don't feel like the second guy that they sign after Agbadu is going to be someone that we should expect to come in and start right away if Toti is healthy, I would say. So even missing him, I think was a big one. All right. We didn't have a lot of time to collect questions because we kind of recorded right after the match. So that is it for No Stupid Questions. But one more reminder is go to esfuerzowines.com. Help our friends out. Check out the 1-pack wines that has a special shout out on the bottle for Wolves supporters and for the Whole Lot of Wolves podcast. And when you do so, go and use the promo code VITOR at checkout. Get 30% off of your order. It's a great bargain for great wine. And then you can join us with Vino for Vitor.
It's close to the final whistle. So, Drew, can you let our Pat know how they can connect with you?
Sure. I'm on X at Drew Freakin, and if you are looking to watch a game with fellow Wolves supporters in the Pittsburgh area, check out Steel City Wolves on Facebook, or go to the Pitch on Butler during game days.
Awesome. Thanks to Alex producing, Danny on the socials, you, our listeners or YouTube viewers tuning in. Without you, there wouldn't be a whole lot of Wolves, so we appreciate your continued support. If you are new to our YouTube, please head on over, give it a like of our content, subscribe. This does wonders to help boost our exposure. So more immediate post-game reaction is coming up from Whole Lot of Wolves. We'll be with you Saturday this week after the Bristol City game to review that match and then preview a busy week when we've got 2 games coming up in the EPL, Newcastle and then Chelsea. So in the meantime, if you're going about your ways and you're thinking up the latest lyrics to do a player song for Adabadu, try and incorporate up the mighty Wolves.